Seton headed east, deeply affected by his Western adventure, and determined to record what had happened. In the story he wrote, he boldly cast himself as the villain and the wolf as the hero. His book, Wild Animals I Have Known, was an immediate worldwide hit. Virtually overnight, it propelled Seton from a little-known naturalist into a major celebrity. But what really mattered to Seton now was saving America's wilderness before it was too late. Historian David Witt thinks the turning point can be traced back to a single word in Seton's journal.
He has this last word in the entry, why. And it was a very big why. It was even written in large letters. I thought maybe he was putting down that why, asking why did the animal die? Because he follows up with a couple of notes about the physical condition of the animal. But I think that the why was much bigger than that. It really was a why asking, why are we doing this? What is our relationship to nature? Why are we destroying it like this?
At a time when few people questioned the destruction of nature, Seton spoke up for the wilderness. His views about the value of the wild found favor with politicians like Teddy Roosevelt and helped to turn the tide of public opinion. Seton used his influence to push for the creation of more national parks. Thousands of ordinary Americans became aware of their spectacular natural heritage.
So Seton took a leading role in what became the conservation movement and eventually the environmental movement. He was talking about our relationship not only to animals, but to all of nature. He was doing it in a very ecological way. He was certainly one of the first ecologists.
Seton also lobbied for hunting restrictions and anti-poaching measures, and was instrumental in pushing through radical new laws to protect migrating birds.
He did lobby for environmental legislation, including the first wildlife legislation that protected migratory animals. And because of Seton, they lobbied Congress and expanded federal government authority to the interstate control of wildlife. It was a major increase in federal government authority, and it laid the groundwork for every single piece of environmental legislation that has come after that time.
And it wasn't just a question of saving the wilderness. Seton felt that people had to experience it in order to care about it, that it should be a part of everyone's upbringing. Inspired by the values of Native American culture, he founded the Woodcraft Indians, an organization that taught children many of the skills needed for outdoor life, along with a respect for nature. Many of these ideas were later adopted as the basis for the Boy Scouts in England, and Seton himself was a founding father of the Boy Scouts of America. By the early years of the 20th century, the United States led the world in the conservation of nature, and tens of thousands of children were heading off to camp in the woods and the mountains. Seton had been a prime mover in all of this, and it had all started back in the Currumpaw in the autumn of 1893, when he'd set out to kill an outlaw wolf called Lobo. But what about wolves? Was the new nature-loving America ready to embrace its old enemy? For decades, Seton was virtually alone in his desire to protect wolves alongside the other wild animals. It has taken a long time for the rest of America to catch up. As head of the Wolf Recovery Program in Yellowstone, Doug Smith sees his job as trying to complete what Seton began.
The change of heart to wolves has only been going for about 30 or 40 years. I mean, literally in the United States, in the 1960s, most people still thought wolves were bad. And I think what we had is an awakening to a new environmental movement, and that killing all these predators, wolves and other carnivores, without question for so long, I think the light bulb went on in people's heads as is why. But I need to be very clear. there is still a large group of people who retain the old view of wolves. I know people who have come up to me and said, my grandfather killed off this animal to make life here easier, and you're bringing it back. So attitudes have changed, but the old attitudes still exist. And so now we're at this very polarized bashing of heads about how to live in this world. Because some people feel predators like wolves have no place still, as many people felt in Seaton's time. But others are saying, hey, we made a mistake, and we need to bring wolves back. Seaton has had a tremendous impact on where we are today in terms of respecting nature. And I think enough people, at least in North America, Canadians and Americans, recognize that we have maybe overstretched our reach in terms of what we've taken.
Seaton's personal transformation from wolf killer to wolf protector was the beginning of something much bigger. It set the course for a totally fresh understanding of the nature of wolves. And it helped pave the way for the return of wolves and other predators to their rightful place at the heart of the wild. The duel between Seaton and Lobo may have led to sad deaths, but ultimately, it also breathed new life into Americans' appreciation of their wilderness. In later life, Seaton returned to live in his beloved New Mexico.
I have been much criticized, firstly for killing Blanca and Lobo, but chiefly for telling of it, to the distress of many tender hearts. To this I reply, in what frame of mind are my readers left with regard to the wolf? Are their sympathies quickened toward the man who killed him, or toward the noble creature who died as he lived, dignified, fearless, and steadfast?
Right up to his death in 1946, Seaton continued to reflect on the wolf that changed his life.
Ever since Lobo, my sincerest wish has been to impress upon people that each of our native wild creatures is in itself a precious heritage that we have no right to destroy or put beyond the reach of our children.